Great job done by Ryan Mullen. Pulling faces though. Gourmet might have to surf the wheels of another leader in order to stay in position.
Tough jobs demand even tougher power tools. The Hercules 20-volt brushless platform from Harbor Freight is rigorously tested by professionals to make
to the Leberg after high good care. A bit of a drag up. Junior Pro Cycling, nicely judged effort from them. And Unibet Rose Rockets so handily placed close to the front. 75 kilometers to go of the 207 kilometers that were faced in front of the riders at the beginning of this opening salvo of opening weekend. Omloop is upon us, and it is for many, as I said in my opening comments, the real start of the racing season for many, certainly in and around Flanders Way. Excitement reaches fever pitch. And the route has been made ever so slightly more challenging. They've got two more climbs for the riders to face, the Ten Bosch and the Tarikaberg. It's slightly longer than last year's. I mean, it's not outrageously long by the history of this event. Lambrecht, forever in our hearts. We'll always remember, lest we forget. There you are. Clement Aleno, the 25-year-old Frenchman in the break for the Burgos-Sport Pellet BH squad. That squad's making their debut in this race. On to the Leberg at its most demanding at the start, as you can see. Little 10% sector that you want to be absolutely perfectly placed. Keep your position as best you can. And grind your way through the rest of it. Second opportunity for these riders to see it today. Down the back of the peloton. Altogether more challenging. So far looking good for the UAE Team Emirates XRG squad. They've got Lehrmann, Belgian national champion, in prime position. And not making too much of an investment in moving to the front. I wonder how Tim Wellens is feeling. It's been a great start of the season. He's representing for the UAE. Let's hear from Tim Wellens.
Tim Wellens, you already showed you're in a very strong form in Class KGN, where you even said you put in your best 60-minute power of all time. Would be an effort like that also your biggest chance to win today?
Yes, indeed. I don't need to wait for the sprint today, Ninove. Also the Muur, I don't know, it's quite difficult to make a difference on the Muur. I hope the race will be decided earlier, and I hope I will be in a good moment there. But yes, I need an effort of 20, 30, 40 kilometers to make my winning move.
Do you think when you start that early, you will be the first one? Or do you think the final will start earlier than that even?
No, I think if I'm the first one to attack, it's not a good sign. Then it's difficult to get away. So the race needs to be broken open, and then there will be a lot of attacks. And then hopefully I can place my good one. But the theory is always nice, and practice is a little bit more difficult.
Do you think that Mathieu van der Poel is on the start list today will help you in an attractive race?
Yeah, for sure. It will help a lot for attractive racing. But in theory, everybody moves one place back in the results because Mathieu van der Poel it's hard to beat. But no, I'm happy he's here. I'm happy because he always races far from the finish. He makes a lot of chaos, and he's a strong rider, and he always likes to ride.
But one way back in the results, you start here to win today, right?
Yeah, for sure. But we need to be realistic. When Mathieu van der Poel is there, he has a big chance of winning.
No, cycling always sounds very simple when a rider is logical and as bright as Tim Wellens is explaining it. So it's all very simple and needs to go a long time before the Moor. He has the Strava record, of course, on the Moor from a stage of Renewy Tour a few years ago. Finished second on that stage, but an earlier assault on the the more. He took the Strava record of 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and we're watching with interest to see how he gets on. He's certainly very nicely positioned, isn't he? Right at the front of the bunch, knows exactly where he wants to be, knows exactly where he wants to be when he needs to be. And as you can see, the gilets are flapping around on those Burgos BH pellet riders down towards the back of this group, which is in danger of being detached from the main peloton. So it's a tough old visit to Flanders for many of these riders in here. Georgios Bouglas, the Greek rider, is in there. Daniel Cavia from Spain. Josh Burnett, Alexandre Meyer, Minek, Matthias. All lined out, down towards the back. Belgian Classics racing at its best. Even if they don't agree, we think it's fabulous. Group 1's advantage has been pared back significantly. Heading 71 to go, so at this point, probably about 1.5 kilometers further back. We're getting close to 2 kilometers. Are these riders? There you are. Don't give up just yet. Stay in. What an accumulation of experience this is. It's to be bagged and logged, not just for this race, but for others. And, of course, as well, you can think about the editions of this race to come. And, of course, as well, you're honouring the event, you're honouring the sport, you're honouring a huge tradition. In this particular event, going back to 1945 with the first victory of Jean Bogarts, back when it was known as Omloop van Vlaanderen. Pretty quickly changed its name to Omloop Het Volk to take account of the sponsorship from the Het Volk newspaper, and it was so monikered all the way to 2008 when there was a merging of the two rival newspapers. Omloop Het Nieuwsblad became the new title, and that's been condensed ever, down to these days now. Omloop Nieuwsblad. Circle of the news. Staying fed up front. Total Energy are well represented by Alexis Brunel, 27-year-old Frenchman, and the winner of the Grote Presse, Jean-Pierre Montserrat, in 2025. He's a rider who likes these roads, likes this kind of racing, and he's probably the most accomplished rider in this particular group. Alexis Brunel, I had to line him up and pick him out as a potential favourite for the Total Energy squad when he figured his best opportunity as we past the cyclotourists on the right-hand side for a jaunt and out for a ride, maybe heading off to another berg to encounter and enjoy this particular fair. Brunel has scored some pretty big results in his career. That one stand out. GP Jean-Pierre Montserrat from 2025. 11th in Trofeo San Salinas. It's not a big name breakaway group. None of these riders expected to survive through to the finish, but putting yourself in the break, it's a much less stressful day in one way. And of course, you just might get picked up by a couple of superstars. If the wind blows, you'd never know. Could be a ticket to stardom. Clement Aleno crouches low over the bars. A long time out front at this point for these riders. Coming down to the final 70 kilometers. We're looking forward to the next big climb to come. Not too far from the Eichenberg now. And the next climb is 61.5, so we're within 7.5 kilometers of the second assault on the Eichenberg. 1,200 meters. With cobbles, 5.2%, 10% at its maximum. So that's a challenging one for these riders to encounter and to consider. It's not too far after that. We have the Holleweg, cobbled flat sector, the Kerkgate, Jagerij, and then we're into the Molenberg coming after that. 12 climbs in total. Add to that another 8 sections of cobbles. 2 new climbs this year, and it has been the subject of much speculation, of course. How much of an influence will those 2 particular climbs play on the overall destination of honours today. I wonder if they had last year's route and Van der Poel came. Would it have come down to a bunch sprint? Indeed, I wonder if that's kind of busy. Those riders spilling out to the right-hand side, involuntarily so. That's as a result of all of the pushing. Pick out Tim Wellens. He knows how to cruise through the peloton. That Belgian national champions jersey will get a little bit of extra respect, but not that much. They're shoulder to shoulder, incredibly tightly grouped, and yet Tim Wellens perfectly judged. They do say you can ride up the middle. In some ways it's less stressful, but often hard to find a way through. Then you've got the added stress, I suppose, on many of these Belgian roads, particularly with the big paving slabs. You've got that so-called Valley of Death, that ridge into which you do not want your wheels to go. It separates the concrete slabs on certain roads. This is, of course, a big tarmac section, so less stressful from that point of view. And all the more tempting for Tim Wellens to take position as the Lidl Trek squad try and take command. Tom Squinch on the front. Squinch with Matthias Vacek, the Czech rider, as we heard from earlier, with high hopes. A little bit of cyclocrossing for others. Everybody's doing what they can to maintain a position. Borgosberg for Pellet, still representing, staying in as long as they can. 67 to go for the riders at front and down to just 2 minutes. I don't think the advantage for those riders up front is going to get back up over 3 minutes again. The pace and intensity of these climbs and the approaches to these sectors becoming ever more obvious, ever faster, ever more challenging. NSN still on this one. And riders moving around left and right, trying to take them out of the front of the peloton. Still the NSN squad. Little Trek have made an appearance to the front, and all of this extra intensity on the front on the approach to our next sector of cobbles is only going to do one thing for the advantage of those riders up front. Still north of 2 minutes, but I have a feeling that's coming down quickly. Our 5 riders up front have done a super job so far, staying as long as they can. Jeltek Krijnen from the Jaco Alula squad, one of the first riders to kick off the breakaway of 5 riders. Alexi Reynard from the Cofidis squad, and Alieno, Vincent van Hemelen, and Alexi Brunel. Meanwhile, further back, it's all about control. Who has it? Who wants it? Who's feeling a little out of control? Mathieu van der Poel, for the first time we pick him out close to the front. He's cruising along at the back of the peloton quite a lot recently. It's all changed. Aleno down the back here, 25-year-old Frenchman. 3 Frenchmen in this break. I'm just mindful of that extraordinary statistic that no Frenchman's ever won this race. Going to change today. Vincent van Hemelen, just Belgian rider, just has a little look across. And Aleno. Alexi Reynard on the front of the group at the moment. And he's replaced by the eldest rider in the group, Alexi Brunel. One of the youngest riders in the race is Matthew Brennan from the Visma Lisa bike squad. Twin pronged assault for them today. I wonder what Matthew Brennan fancies his chances.
You're second. I don't have my facts right. What did you learn from last year then?
Yeah, where the climbs were. I forgot last year that there was the Bosberg after the Mur, so that was a big wake-up call last year. But I remember that for this year. A lot of twisty roads, a lot of crosswinds that could potentially be a big factor for today, so it's just going to be big chaos.
How big a blow is it for you guys missing Wout?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate he's not here. I think he sent us a WhatsApp message this morning really wishing us the best of luck, and I know he's going to be sat watching on the TV, probably doing some analysis on what we're all doing wrong, but no, I think it doesn't really change how we're going to race. We're still going to race really aggressively, still going to try and do the best we can and create the best scenario we can, and hopefully we can win.
Yeah, he'd rule it out for Matthew Brennan. Yeah, Bosberg comes after the more. That must have been a shell shock situation really for Matthew Brennan, but it's all a learning curve for a 20-year-old. And how accomplished and how many victories did he take last year? Let me see. Got a beautiful study profile of the main peloton. All looks all very controlled and cool, calm, and collected at the moment. Get a move on. With the smoke there, it's just one of the challenges the riders have to face as they cruise along towards the next appointment and the next difficulty and the next challenge. In this, the first race of the Classic season. The Omloop. Oh, no riders down, and just and two riders from the UAE squad badly implicated here. And it's going to take a little while to untangle themselves. I'll be somewhat relieved that they have Tim Wellens out of trouble. Herregots, I think, is one of those riders that has been Rune Herregots finding himself in difficulty. It's in actual fact, Roy Oliveira, a young Portuguese rider. He's 29 years of age now. Looking a bit shell-shocked by that one. Just a little shake of the head. So let's get a look at this one. Touch of wheels. We have a little glance over to the left-hand side. It's where most of the UAE riders. Herregots is, I think, a little bit of an innocent victim of that one. Looked like he was going to make his way around it, but unfortunately catches the back wheel. Over the top he goes. Frustration for Herregots, but he was quickly back on his feet. And I can only suggest that it's not going to be a collarbone issue for Roy Oliveira. Will he be able to get back on his bike? Not the right collarbone. 4-3 already. Local time for the riders as they race through Flanders in Omloop Nieuwsblad 2026. Still a large peloton involved. It's now the riders up front face the next painful sector of cobbles. Onto the Eichenberg. Well, you got the statistics there. 5 and a bit percent, 10% on average. I've seen this one already. And now, at this point in the proceedings, the relative strengths of the riders will be starting to become more evident. Not just to the riders themselves, but maybe to us as well. Still, they race.
Here you go, miss.
One or other riders in here starting to feel the pinch a little bit. I think they'll be hanging around and waiting for them. This is why. They're starting to get a bit push on the front. Soren Krauw controls on the right-hand side of your picture for the Lidl Trek squad. Far left, Biakovsky is looking after things for the Ineos Grenadiers squad. If you're in the middle, you've just got to accept your penance here and understand that there's very little. The Owen riders down, and there's a big wave from the Visma Lisa bike squad, and I think they all managed more or less to stay up. But how many other riders were implicated by that? I'm talking about the penance of finding yourself further back than you would like, and that's the confusion and tangle of bodies. Well, they talk about chaos. That's what you saw there. It was remarkable. You could see the touch of wheels, the sudden concertina effect, and the wave of riders just suddenly spilling through that Visma Lisa bike squad en masse. But I think pretty much all of them managed to stay up. Meanwhile, Down to 4 up front. I don't think he'll be hanging around for Eleno. He'd do well to get back on here. So on a crown nose now, even better. Even if he didn't already know the value of that, they'll have heard the familiar horrible crunching of carbon fiber and metal. And know what it meant. I just don't know exactly who was implicated. But they do know it's important to stay where you can possibly be, and Mathieu van der Poel, noticeable, and he's exactly where he needs to be. Nice souvenir. Got to get that rain jacket off at the right time, doesn't matter. Spritzing with some little rubberized rain repellent. Van der Poel's perfectly positioned. Couldn't be better at the moment. Question is, when's the attack coming? Meanwhile, rearguard action recovery is in effect. Clement at the back and not coming back. This is the point where the legs just won't respond anymore. 140 kilometers in the legs. 8 kilometers in the legs at this point for these riders. If you didn't know about the intensity, see it emerging and unfolding in front of your eyes. This Abraham will be further back than might be deemed ideal, nonetheless still very much part of this large group. Philipsen in perfect and prime position as well. Meanwhile, a bit of work to be done for Pidcock by the looks of things. Not where he needs to be. Clearly one of those riders that was implicated and delayed and finds himself chasing, and not for the first time in the last 20 or 30 kilometres. Tom Pidcock finds himself on the wrong end of a split. Ryan Mullen as well, after all his great work for the NSN squad, finds himself chasing back. It's not necessarily going to help Tom Pidcock though. He knows he's a major threat potentially to the race-winning ambitions of Bini Girmay and Lewis Haskey. Meanwhile, down to the 4 up front. Did a really solid job actually, because while they lost time up the Eichenberg, wasn't a huge amount of time, and I think this is a powerful contribution here from Alexis Brunel, his fellow countryman. On the back, Alexis Renard maintaining position. Paul Magne. This is not ideal. Another major, and he's got to take a bike from neutral service. So this is a disaster scenario for Paul Magne. He's on the neutral bike, and well, does he wait for the team bike or does he continue on this bike? He's not too far from potential service there, actually. Wheels for other squads to the right, and I think he's just decided that it might be better off waiting for his own bike, the perfect setup that he'll get from that. See that quick step car, not too far away. They're just going to, that's neutral service, just getting rid of Paul Magne's bike, and the man who finished second last year, a stunning run of victories. It's a hefty push back into action from Tom Stales, the 1996 winner. Let's get a look at this again. Magne ended up on the right-hand side of the road, so was that step off the bike? Yeah, he certainly did. Off the bike. As indeed were plenty of others. Chain off, and clearly a mechanical issue for his bike. So Magne, no rain jacket required at this point. Time to get busy, get urgent, and he's going to be pretty hot and bothered. But he does at least have the assistance of Casper Pedersen to try and make his way back into contention. But a few matches to be burned for him to make his way back in. Inside 60 to go. Still no sign of the anticipated attack from Mathieu van der Poel. Are we going to see attacks from any other riders? Just going to see all of this intensity on the front to try and prevent attacks. Tim Wellens maintains a pretty healthy position, but these cobbles are more unyielding than most. The Holloweg comes with a health warning. Angle on the front for the Team Visma Lisa Bike squad, doing a really solid job controlling. They're 9-10 seconds leaked off the advantage of the four riders up front. Training in the purple of the Jacob Lula squad. The rider who kicked this one off into the Woldenberg. It wasn't long about coming, was it? Fifth hill of the day. Almost 8% on average. A little bit of cobbles. One of the steeper ones on its maximum percentage as well at 17%. Lotto Intermarché squad on the front of the peloton. UAE team member XRG as well. It's trying to create a little bit of control for Tim Wellens. The Lotto Intermarché squad with Arnaud Delis to protect, and it's the cat has been put right among the pigeons by that crash on the last climb of the Eichenberg, and it's forced a scenario where lots of riders find themselves chasing. Now, here's Jasper Philipsen. Is he working his way through the main peloton or a chase group? Looks relatively relaxed and certainly was in prime position on the approach to the last climb. So sure he's not a little bit further back. You know, Matthew Van der Poel is just where he needs to be. He's third wheel. He's Lampart as well. He's put himself well to the fore for the Soudal Quick Step squad. We've seen Paul Magnier, their favourite, off his bike of late. He's getting caught up. A little bit of damage to his bike. Took a neutral service, bike didn't work out. Time to go attacking, and almost inevitably, Kasper Asgreen has decided CF Education Easy Post that should be on the attack first. They're a squad that likes to go racing, and they like to go from the front, and they like to try and shake it up a little bit and create a different scenario. That's a difficult moment, as again for Van Mechelen. Vlad Van Mechelen, as they try and route the cars around him. Bahrain victorious rider in a moment of distress. And how many different crashes have we seen in the last 10-15 minutes? This has been, well, carnage and the usual chaos. These riders, well, many of them love it, don't they? They absolutely adore the sheer full-on nature of this kind of racing. Not that anyone likes falling off his bike. Now, Kasper Asgreen, attacked by way of defence. 31-year-old Danish rider, accomplished now that he is in his Palmares, dotted with stunning results, including, of course, winner of Ronde van Vlaanderen, E3, Brussels Corn on opening weekend. We also got Moraine Vandenberg and Vincenzo Albanese, both of whom performed a great distinction in this race last year. Albanese 8th across the line, Vandenberg 9th if memory serves. Kasper Asgreen doesn't want to bring it down to a sprint. Wants to be part of whatever group is going to contest for glory. Ideal scenario would be if he was going solo. It's a long way to the line from here, and I'm sure he will expect that sooner rather than later something's coming across to him. But it's a powerful contribution here from Kasper Asgreen. Will he join up with the riders up front before he's joined by someone else? Across the Woldenberg. Heading towards Kerkat. Next appointment, 1,400 meters of cobbles. Too far from Oudenarde here. Which, of course, course, is the destination point of Ronde van Vlaanderen, an event that this man has won in the past. Second season with the EF Education Easy Post squad after his departure from Soudal Quickstep. With the Wolfpack for many a long and very successful year. Kasper Asgreen, pastures new for him, relatively new. Finished 40th. Oh, more riders down. Difficult moment to catch the Uno X rider, but that's certainly Magnus Sheffield. He's coming off a 6th place overall at Valenciana. He's in some good form. The Ineos Grenadiers squad, the American rider. Well, Shimano Ninja Service helped him put the chain back on, and then he was and off he went. So it's a usual scenario there for Magnus Sheffield. I didn't quite realise that that bike was potentially fully operable. Just spilling off left and right. Bit of a tangle with that rider from Uno X. Bressel, by the way. Eric Nordstetter. Sheffield taking the opportunity to dispense with the rain jacket. It could be just simply impossible to get a rain jacket off in this kind of intensity of racing. The other issue is getting fed, making sure you're getting the gels in. It's those riders that find it a little bit easier to operate the bunch, that have the power deep into a race, are able to contemplate the idea of taking the gel out. In some ways, the rich get richer. Less complication in that regard for Kasper Asgreen. Hugely invested here, though. And he can see, if he looks over his shoulder, and I know he won't be thinking about it, that the Alpecin Premier Tech squad have assembled on the front. It looks like them, at any rate, on the front of the peloton. Wait for further confirmation of that. But they're all lined out. There's pretty much no one coming to the front of that bunch anytime soon. Unless you manage to make a huge investment of effort. These wet roads, these glistening roads, all the more challenging for that fact. Cobble sectors will be a source of trepidation for many. Sheffield's racing solo to rejoin. As I said, he's on some fine form. 6th in that in the recent Valenciana. String of top 10 performances. He picks up Asgreen up front, or at least off the front of the main peloton, picks up Eleno from the early break. Eleno gets a reprieve. Asgreen, though, I don't think is going to get much contribution from Eleno. A minor aerodynamic advantage of having a rider right on your tail. Out of the municipality of Oudenaarde and across Kerkhout. Eleno didn't last long. A little bit of a drag here to go with the cobbles makes this, well, it's a barely perceptible drag, but then you add in the cobbles, it feels like a mountain. Now, Nordstetter was pretty quick about making his way onto the back of this group. He'll hope that no one's going to let the wheel go in front. I don't think he can be that confident, though. There are two riders flapping around, not much enjoying it. Philipsen. It was Philipsen that was off the back, so that is a surprise and a bit of a shock. Paul Magnier is joined. So two of the pre-event favourites, two of the fastest sprinters in the world, two riders that have gone head-to-head, finding themselves off the back, and they have got a lot of work to do. And we know Magnier has the assistance of at least one teammate. Casper Pedersen went back for him really quickly. That can only be good news for Jasper Philipsen. Philipsen, of course, will know that Matthew van der Poel's in fine position up front. Nordsetter's going to take a wheel from neutral service. You get all the help wherever you can. Neutral service probably busier at this race than there will be at many a race throughout the year. Just what is the level of compatibility? Uno X running on SRAM. It's like a one-by setup for them. Many of their teams, of course, one-by with just one chainring. Meanwhile, not hanging around to see how he's getting on. Philipsen, Magnier just in front of him. Jasper Philipsen third last year. The man directly in front was second. And Magnus Sheffield, after dispensing with a jacket, has Done a solid job to make his way onto this group. Well, actually, wasn't he ahead of it? I think he's been caught and passed, so not much enjoying it. True matter, heading for the Agarai. Next sector of cobbles. About this, and I tell you what, he'd be a very grateful man. He does have a teammate, so each of Manier and Philipson have a teammate to assist, a couple of other riders as well. Meanwhile, off the front, nicely timed effort by Casper Asgreen, you might have thought, but problematic for him is the fact that he's not making any huge advantage on the, or at least not taking much of an advantage from the main peloton. Looks about as if they're going to rejoin the Danish rider, so frustrating.
Unlock the world's largest, most liquid financial market with Forex.com. Forex, or FX.
And onto the Agarai as the breakaway starts to crack a little bit. And they're going looking for as much help as they can possibly get from the gutter on the left-hand side. It'll be a little bit dangerous to go in there. You never know what sort of corruption and rubbish and the potential implications might be for your tires, but nonetheless, they'll know just how much faster it's going to make them. Asgreen, I think, is about to, if he hasn't already been reabsorbed by the Uno X-led peloton. Now, it's a difficult moment for one of the riders who kicked this one off there. Oh, it's in the back in actual fact, and this is Maury Capio, who's a very experienced Belgian rider, finds himself in a chase group. 32-year-old Belgian rider, just off the back of this Jasper Philipsen, Paul Manier group. Should be Paul Manier, Jasper Philipsen. Both of these riders trying to recover from being delayed by crashes and mechanical issues. And all is calm and collected at the front of the main peloton. If you believe that, we're certainly not down in the middle of it. More riders down, and we just picked a side of a pile up at the bottom of our screen. We'll widen the shot, and the Jayco Alula riders, and that's quite the little confusion, isn't it? It's Cofidis, EF Education, Easy Post Tutor, Pro Cycling, and indeed a rider from the Alpecin Premier Tech squad who hasn't got his jacket off, finding themselves in a painful scenario. That's a familiar one to way too many riders so far today. Oh, and Stefan Kung is among them, a man who might have thought that he could replicate and maybe even go a little bit better than his performance from last year. Getting to the kite last year, clear of the field. Stefan Kung these days, part of the Tudor Pro Cycling lineup. What a strong lineup they've come, and they'd really like to have Stefan Kung in there all the way to the back end. And looks like it's going to be the case. Meanwhile, control maintained by the UAE Team Emirates XRG squad. Just a piffling 13 wins so far this year. That's one more than they'd managed to this period last year, which was an awesome return. 20 different riders delivering success for them. So 87 wins. Well, they're well on the way to replicating that. And they have Julius Johansson on the front of their group trying to organize things. Herregots is going. Or is it Vermeersch just behind? Has got himself into position. And Jens Pollitt handily placed as well. Tim Wellens happy enough just to slot in a little bit further back. Let's get a look at this group of riders desperate to try and get themselves back in, flapping around all over the place. Touch of wheels in the gutter. That looked like a painful one, certainly a very fast one. Meanwhile, this is the front group. Their advantage down to just 3/4 of a minute. And your breakaway group of 4 riders down to 4. They've dispensed with the hopes of Clement Eleno, but we've still got Jelte Krein, and he's on the back of the group here at the moment. Tim Flanders Balwas just in front, Vincent van Hemelen representing for them. They've got Alexi Brunel for the Total Energy squad. And Alexi Reinhardt also among the lineup for the Team Cofidis squad. Riders trying to recover from their various travails and difficulties out the road. Plenty of riders coming back from crashes, others delayed by crashes. 1 or 2 punctures along the way, and it looks increasingly as if they're going to get close. Are they going to get there in time? Well, the truly Agari, the next major appointment and difficulty for the riders up front is the high hook into Leberg. Look at the Molenberg, of course, yeah. Molenberg just about to be reached. And on the Molenberg, they've got 300 meters of cobbles across that 463 meters. Short, sharp shock. And then it's not too far to the hag hook, and then Leberg coming thick and fast now. All of these efforts, and that's why Søren Grau is on the front for the Lidl Trek squad, as he and Vacek re-establish control for Lidl Trek. Johansson there for the UAE squad. The Alpecin Premier Tech team will very shortly, I think, have representation. This is just what the Molenberg looks like. The cobbled sector at the bottom of that climb is sure to cause all sorts of shenanigans and challenges and difficulties. %, by maximum. And time. Oh, and Ryan, that is not exactly the perfect place for that to happen, is it? And not sure which of the Tudor Pro cycling riders went down there. Was it Trentin? Climbers will have certainly wanted to be in prime position. And Mathieu van der Poel, I think, has been drawn out of the front of this peloton here. Time to get going. And that Molenberg just starts to ease a little bit with the arrival of the smoother tarmac and the arrival of Mathieu van der Poel up front. A little look over his shoulder. Tells Vermeersch he's got company, and the company of one of the biggest and most important riders in this event. Florian Vermeersch off the front. This Melissa bike fighting a rearguard action now. couple of representatives of the Jaco Alula squad, pretty prominent. And Ryan having a pretty good day by the looks of things. And riders at 6s and 7s. There'll be a regrouping after this, but now we're starting to see the wheat separate from the chaff for the first time today. Let's get a look at this. The front wheel just bucking under the huge effort being made by Vermeersch. Certainly not Trentin. Might have been outside or climbers. That to be established. No doubt about the man that got around it first, and it was, to his great delight, Mathieu van der Poel. Great bike handling, great strength, great abilities up front now. Time to get going. Time to fix a few problems. Settles in for a 3-up, but for how much longer? And this is a perfect scenario for Mathieu van der Poel. He'll be satisfied with the current situation. Other teams maybe a little less so. We get two Vermeersch up front. Mathieu van der Poel hits the front. The Van Dijk brothers. Settle in. I'm not so sure how much assistance he's going to get here. Do you ride with the former world champion, with one of the preeminent force in classics racing over the last few seasons? Is this to the ultimate benefit? It's Tim Van Dijk indeed. It's two Dutchmen and a Belgian. Marion Vermeersch hits the front for the UAE Team Emirates XRG squad. Decides to give a turn. Let's settle in and see which way and how things fall and how things settle down. UAE Team Emirates, 3 teams up front. Alpecin Premier Tech. And the 4, well, I say they're up front, they're ahead of the peloton, but they're about to join up with the 4 riders from the remaining riders from that group up front. Trainen, Reynard, Van Hemelen and Brunel. Meanwhile, that peloton is shattered at this point. It's still 42 kilometers remaining. Right now, you wouldn't say this is going to develop into a bunch kick situation. The very fact that Mathieu van der Poel is off the front and gunning for glory. Well, they've got the news, haven't they? That here comes the big guns, and the biggest gun of all is among them. So, well, just take a moment to try and settle in, and they didn't really necessarily want Van der Poel coming past as they're on this drag, albeit it's not a cobble section, but the riders from the early break will try and settle in for a very, very painful few minutes or more. Unlikely to be able to contribute. And Van der Poel with the big pulls here. The main peloton assembled, such as it is. That's about as big a group as there is out the road right now, I think. And there's a decent-sized group trying to come back from behind. A little bit of panic from the Pinarello Q36.5. So I'm not so sure that Tom Pidcock's involved in this bike race right now. He was, of course, chasing back after being delayed by that big pile-up a little earlier on. And it was the second chase, of course, of the day, and finding himself fighting a little bit of a rear guard action. Pinarello Q36.5 squad maybe just have to find another way. Not sure how Brent Van Moor or Fred Ryder are placed right now. But a reassembly is absolutely critical, and the problem is that the riders coming up from behind might not necessarily have the same level of strength. Can there be a collective gain? And a little bit of a tailwind section, as you can see, is certainly to the benefit of the riders that have made their escape and taking their leave of the rest. Still, the issue very much finely balanced. Well, Mathieu van der Poel's not asking for a whole lot of help here. In the odd turn here and there. But Florian Vermeersch may be thinking, ideally, I'd really rather have Tim Wellens up front. Similarly, for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, Tim van Dijk was thinking we might have a better shot of Jordi Meus or Arne Maritz were in position up here. Of the Lotto Intermarché squad finding himself in a very lonely position indeed, in between groups. Coming back for Arnaud Delis, who's been caught in dispatches so far. Let's see as this one opens up. Group 3. With work to do, down to the final 40 kilometres, so well inside the final quarter of racing of the 207-kilometre Omloop Nieuwsblad. Opening weekend is well underway, and these riders have from their lungs up to the capillaries. Who's going to open their account with victory today? Right now, strong position developing for Mathieu van der Poel, albeit got a couple of strong contenders from maybe the leading squads in this race. Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and UAE Team Emirates XRG more particularly represented up front. And then you've got the riders from the early break hanging on in there for as long as they possibly can. .39 to go. The Leberg, third and final assault of the Leberg coming very shortly. That's hill 7 of 12. And it doesn't look as if he's getting any assistance right now, and that's unsurprising, really. Mathieu van der Poel starts to detach the riders from the early break. Alexis Brunel feeling the heat of the effort from none other than MVDP. Well, the Lotto Intermarché squad starting to chase behind, so Delis, I can only assume, is thereabouts, not him just slotting in. And this group is starting to swell in size. They're gathering up reinforcements. Problem is, find themselves almost a minute down already. How quickly that was. Van der Poel doesn't look like he's starting to break sweat just yet. Up the Leberg. Through the, by now, familiar smoke flares. Brunel doesn't want to give up just yet. He's still got a bit of fight in him, but has he got the power to match this effort? Not so sure Van Hemelen does either. Jelte Kruijnen. Great day out for the Dutchman. For the Jayco AlUla squad, it's fighting grimly to stay in position. Brunel, I think, has been detached for good. Meanwhile, the Lotto Intermarché squad have taken command behind. Niels Pollitt just policing this one, represented up front. So an interesting scenario developing for the UAE Team Emirates XRG, because well, Mathieu van der Poel's not got any contribution of late that we've seen from Florian Vermeersch. Neither too is Niels Pollitt at the moment contributing. So long pull here on the front from the Lotto Intermarché squad arriving at the Labour.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete...
Let's settle smoothly back into the saddle. Rev it over the top of a climb, which in its the bare statistics, not particularly among the more demanding, but it's not one of the shorter ones, 950 meters, so it's not short, albeit 4.2% average. Makes it one that many of the riders in here will be able to handle. Yeah, Pollitt not contributing. The Rebel Bora squad assembled at the front and said, we've got a rider up front. We're not going to ride just yet. Are they happy with the rider they've got up front? Or are they just happy to let another team burn resources? There's a resettling here, and you feel the intensity's gone out of this one across the climb. Let's have a look around, see who's managed to make it in here. At the moment, not even racing for second. Gap continues to go out. Mathieu van der Poel only knows one way. A long way to go before he can think about trying to detach the others or play the tactics of this one. And a fabulous opportunity for Florian Vermeersch to showcase his ability. He's presented with, or encouraged indeed, by Mathieu van der Poel to make an investment on the front. The 26-year-old from Ghent, based out of his hometown. Heading towards Ninova today. Will it be to ultimate glory? Another stunning victory for the UAE Team Emirates XRG squad. He's ordinarily a helper for them. Victory today would be the biggest success of his career to date. Apple world champion, of course. So certainly won't be afraid of a few cobbles. Van Dijk slots in at the back here. Tim Van Dijk. Dick Van Dijk, his twin brother. He was also part of the lineup for the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe squad today. He too would relish a victory in Omloop. It would be absolutely massive. And a strong position developing for the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe squad, but nonetheless, he's encouraged not to contribute here. Not the rider that they believe can deliver success for them today. They'll punch tickets at the back. Hope against hope that Jordi Meus, Arne Marit and friends can race into position. First race of the year as well for Tim Van Dijk, so he's certainly come in all guns a-blazing. Racing well into the final hour of racing, putting himself in perfect position to react to the effort from Mathieu van der Poel as we arrive onto the boundaries. 8th hill of the day, 8th hill of 12. Almost a kilometre long. Smooth surface, but on an average of 7%. And as you can see, it's not as much challenging at the beginning. That's an unusual scenario, isn't it? He's got the company of all of those other riders, but only Vermeersch seems capable or willing of making any significant contribution. A little bit of a grimace there from Tim Van Dijk, pulling a couple of faces. Meanwhile, they're charging into the boundaries behind, a change in personnel at the front. Want to take command. And they've got to be getting worried now. Still fully 34 kilometres to go, but that is Mathieu van der Poel up front. And if Nasser and friends from the decathlon squad want to maintain an interest in the overall destination of honours today, they need to start doing something a little bit soon. Brunel from the early break he looks okay, but he's just out of power really, and he's just been retained by the peloton. Again, ideally, he'd like to get up and over the Baron Dries. They've certainly done that up front because Van der Poel be grateful for the fact there's a little bit of a decision here. Vermeersch has been given the leeway to contribute here, and the UAE team Emirates XRG squad are going to bet on their man. Developing talent. That is Florian Vermeersch. So the decathlon CMA CGM squad that arrived into Omloop today with hopes of trying to put it, the likes of Tobias Lund or Kees Bol, both very strong sprinters and both in great form so far this year. Put them into a very advantageous position. And put Oliver Nassen, former Belgian champion and a classic star in his own right, to work here to try and stem the flow a little bit. They've managed to control the gap. It hasn't increased in the last few kilometers, nor though has it come down. .32 to go, still 4 climbs left in this one. Long way to go. Mathieu van der Poel has got control of Omloop. Nieuwsblad, can he maintain all the way? And that main peloton might be large in number, but does it have the power? Does it have the collective will? Getting organized in a race of this nature, getting collective organization between teams, not always easy to achieve. Ineos Grenadiers squad look like they want to try and come and contribute. Nassen has gone back in the pocket for now. Otto Intermarché back to help. But are they fighting an increasingly failing rearguard action? I thought it was fascinating to hear from Tim Wellens during our broadcast today. They caught up with him before today's fair, and he said, you've got to be realistic. It is Mathieu van der Poel. Sounded defeatist. I'm not so sure that's what he was thinking, though. Not even sure that was necessarily the message he was trying to convey, but he was certainly laying it out that the key rider in this event, the fulcrum around which all of the tactics are being played out today, is none other than the former world champion Mathieu van der Poel, looking to add Omloop Nieuwsblad to his palmarès today. Looking good as things currently stand. Maintaining. Doesn't look like there's anything they can do about it. Tom Pidcock has teammates around him. Philipsen is back in the fray as well. Group stretched out. Wellens just in front. Most of the heavy hitters part of this group, but they must be getting increasingly anxious. The gap is coming down ever so slightly at the moment. Question is, how many of those riders behind will be satisfied with the minute gap to have to go across? It needs to be lower than that. Now, Van Dijk, after his extended period on the back, just sort of roots through to the front, does a short turn there. A little bit of glass cranking about that one, I think, just maintaining a position in the group. Not necessarily a full-blooded contribution. Pushing hard. To what effect? Inside the final 30 kilometers of the opening Cobble Classic of the year, and Omloop is developing much as we had sort of anticipated that it might. Been an interesting day so far for Florian Vermeersch. He's been on the deck, he's got a spare bike, but he's also managed to infiltrate the front group as Mathieu van der Poel attacked out of the main peloton, hoovered up the remains of the early break of the day. Vermeersch was able to join with Mathieu van der Poel. Tim van Dijk also coming along for the party. And they are now more than a minute clear of the main peloton at 6s and 7s. Sustained push from the Lotto Intermarché squad. Will they be able to get back in contention? Now, the Visma Lease bike squad have recognised the danger. For the first time as well, Lampard has just arrived at the front for the Soudal Quick Step team. Perhaps one of the squads with the greatest strength and depth. They've got Paul Magnier back into this group, as far as I understand. Certainly, we've seen Jasper Philipsen. Magnier was with him after recovering from their various travails and crashes and difficulties. Dylan Van Baarle also among the lineup for the Soudal Quick Step squad today. Shaking the head from Mathieu van der Poel. Doesn't need a gel just yet, or a drink. Does, though, need the contribution from Florian Vermeersch, and he's getting it. So it's 2 against the bunch at the moment, with occasional interventions from Tim van Dijk. He's playing a canny game. Well, there's 28 kilometers remaining, as you can see on your screen, so that must mean that we're not that far from the Ten Bosch. The Ten Bosch and Parikeberg combination. 2 hills that were added to the parcours for this year's edition of Omloop. The addition of 2 more climbs has certainly whetted the appetite of Mathieu van der Poel. May have gone some way to convincing him to be part of the lineup today. This one's skewing ever so slightly away from the sprinters. But he isn't a half-decent sprinter himself. He's more than half-decent. So likes to do it solo. Certainly be happy enough to have pushed the likes of Paul Magnier and Jasper Philipsen. And indeed the defending champion, Søren Verenskjold. Back and out of contention. But just for the first time, we're seeing that gap starting to come down. Tends to yo-yo a little bit in between sections. Powerful contribution from behind. Van der Poel maybe just saving a little bit of something. Aware that the Ten Bosch is coming, all 500 meters of it. Yeah, not the toughest climb they'll face all day. And it's toughest in the middle section of this smooth tarmac. Vermeersch not pulling faces here. He too looks as if he can handle this one. I suspect Van Dijk will need to be vigilant here. Having joined from the peloton behind, will be mindful of the fact that several of the riders in between himself and Mathieu van der Poel at the front are maybe a little bit more fatigued. Up inside a minute, Visma Lease bike starting to put a bit of a squeeze on for Matthew Brennan and Christophe Laporte. And that's a big group. There's still a big group. They've got the Parikeberg to come. immediately afterwards, albeit just over 3 kilometers. He wants a gel now. He certainly earned it. The driving force in this group. Vermeersch making his contribution too. Vermeersch studying serenity. Look at that, a little bit of cyclocross. He's taking it right to the leaves at the edge of the road. A slightly more conservative approach of the other riders in the group. Oh, looks like a rider very much at his ease, with a little bit more in the tank. That's the first race of the season for Tim van Dijk. It's also first race of the season for Florian Vermeersch's been out already. Indeed, he's got plenty of racing. Yeah, just coming back from the UAE Tour. 8th in the individual time trial there. Suggests a decent winter. 5th in the individual time trial at the Volta Comunitat Valenciana. Fired up the engine nicely. Returned back to Europe after racing in sunnier climes, and now finds himself in the wind and rain of Flanders and absolutely loving it, because Florian Vermeersch certainly asking huge questions of the rest of the peloton, the rest of the riders. And the question is, how do these other riders play their card with the passing of these kilometers? And still the climbs to come. Do they work their way up the Parikaberg and then on and head towards the big appointment to come on the Moor, Kappelmoor, and the Bosberg to come immediately after it?
I used to say, if I hear AI one more time, I'm going to lose it. But Monday.com is super easy.
Still barely a glance over his shoulder. Weather conditions a little bit testing and challenging. The windscreen wipers on the supporting cars telling the story. The intensity of the effort means that rain jackets not required. Indeed, sleeves not required for Mathieu van der Poel. He's made of stern stuff. I have to say, I'm slightly surprised to see Florian Vermeersch given his opportunity here. But having said that, he is clearly in absolutely stonking form. He's not showing any effects of the effort to this point. He's very, very quickly clear of the field when there was that little difficulty for the Tudor pro cycling rider. And it was Mathieu van der Poel that responded to the crack at the front of the peloton developed by the U18 Emirates XRG rider. So he's on an A day, there's no doubt about it. But he's up against none other than MVDP. Should the U18 Emirates XRG squad be maybe thinking about just, look at that, cracks developing at the front of the peloton. This is committed investment here by the Lotto Intermarché squad. And now return to the front of the peloton from the decathlon CMA CGM. It's really been, what, 3 teams that have done most of the legwork. Huge committed investment from the Lotto Intermarché squad. And so Bertrand Hagen is doing great work in the front for the Visma Lisa bike team. Decathlon have had Oliver Nassen. Looks like they put another rider into the chase as well. Meanwhile, need all the sustenance you can get if you're coming from the early break. Vincent van Hemelen, huge moment for him in his career. He's been picked up by none other than Matthew van der Poel, and he's going to get every encouragement. To try and maintain the position in here for as long as he possibly can. He gets up and over the... He's up and over the Briekeberg, and if he manages to make it over the moor, anywhere close to the front of the race, could be an absolutely massive moment for him in his career. Bosberg follows. The moor, well, it's about 5k down the road, 6k down the road to this point. The village at Gerardsbergen beckons for these riders. What an iconic venue, an iconic destination it is in the history of cycling. Heritage of this sport, and particularly of Belgian cycling, bound up and wrapped up in these roads around Brakel and into Gerardsbergen and beyond. Etched into the memory of pretty much every cycling fan. It's to the moor, but it's not more to offer than just that. Rolling hills in and around Flanders. Beautiful agricultural lands. Rich pasture land. It's the moor that is all that this man is thinking about right now. He's riding through, he's making all of the efforts, but how much is he saving for the moor to come? How much of an advantage does he feel he has to have? And more particularly, put another way, how much of a gap, realistically, can the likes of Tim Wellens and others in that peloton behind possibly, possibly think can be covered, can be closed when they arrive onto the moor? It's a rare thing, relatively rare thing, that the rider leading over the top of the moor actually goes on to win the race. That doesn't mean that it's not important and that it doesn't play a huge role in the destination of honours. Oh, riders down, and you hear that, just look down at my notes, and you hear that horrible scraping sound. And no time for looking around at the front of the peloton. Huge, huge effort here to try and drag this one down to see if we can pick up on the riders implicated by that crash. But that just gives you a sense of the stresses that these riders are under. So easy for lots of movement in that peloton, and concentration levels perhaps a little bit diminished just by the efforts that they've made so far today. And these are the riders who I suspect are playing no further part in the destination of honours today. This Melissa bike lost at least one rider. Arnaud Delis is down, and that's going to have a huge effect on the efforts being made by the Lotto Intermarché squad, and we do sincerely hope he's going to be able to get back up and in, but I'm not so sure he's going to be able to get back up and in and involved at the front of the race. Let's get a look at this again. I mean, I literally just looked down at my notes and heard the scrapes. I mean, I know that that's exactly what they heard at the front as well. Violent impact with the tarmac. Pain, anger, shock, frustration. Mostly pain. Now down into Gerardsbergen, heading for the moor. Cross the bridge and let the climbing begin. Those smooth, modern cobbles. Only a taster of what's to come. There'll be a huge crowd here as well. Familiar finale, of course, to fans of Ronde van Vlaanderen for many a long year. These are different days, and it becomes the staging post for the finale of Omloop, has been for many years now. And on to the moor, all 900 meters of it. 20% at its most challenging. Vermeersch happy enough to set the tempo, but he knows what's coming, or at least what's likely to come. But it's inconceivable, really, that Mathieu van der Poel will ride up and over this one without making some sort of an injection. Or will it be a full-blooded effort to try and unseat Vermeersch? And Van Dijk moves up into third. He knows he needs to be in position here, needs not to be riding around those riders from the early break. We're praying that a miracle can happen. And maybe, just maybe, they'll still be in contact at the top, but no. And inevitably, really, it is indeed the three that came across that are detaching themselves even before they come to the more challenging part of this climb. And chapeau and congratulations to Jelte Krijnen, Alexi Reinhardt, Vincent van Hemelen. They've done a manful job, and here he goes. Van der Poel is leaving them already. Van Dijk tries to respond. Vermeersch looks like he could be in a bit of a difficult position here. And Van der Poel moving clear, even before they come close to getting the church in sight. Cobbles now becoming more challenging. And Van der Poel just edges clear without even having to make an attack out of the saddle. Not so easy to do, of course, on glistening cobbles. Has to be an in-the-saddle effort. And Van der Poel moves clear without apparently being hugely challenged. Now, Van Dijk and Vermeersch have the collective job of trying to close down Mathieu van der Poel. Here's where the cobbles really start to bite. And Van Dijk ducks his head, and all of the momentum goes out of his body and out of his effort. Vermeersch can barely stay with them, though. They're lifting their front wheel, but they're not able to stay with Van der Poel. And by the time they look and make their way around that next bend, he's out of sight and potentially out of mind. He's gone. Up to the church and across the top, and the crowd are getting what they probably would have expected. It's an MVP show. Well, Vermeersch is desperate just to try and stay with Van Dijk. Across the top, little puff of the cheeks from Mathieu van der Poel. Job done for him. He's got the gap he needs. 18 seconds to the good, and probably more than that, as we wait for the arrival of best of the rest. And Van Dijk has a little bit of daylight on Vermeersch, but Vermeersch coming back any second now. Meanwhile, behind, the gap to the peloton down to just over half a minute. Jordi Meus desperate to try and stay in command. Is it enough of an advantage? Well, it's showing it at almost a minute in actual fact, 51 seconds. So they had only really effectively pared back 15, 18 seconds of the maximum lead that Mathieu van der Poel had in the group that he was in. Approaching the moor, and that surely is going to be too much, or will it be? They've still got the Bosberg. They've still got the collective will, and they've still got numbers aplenty. Riders piling into that bend gives you a sense of just how much momentum they did manage to maintain. A little bit of relief in the gradient for the first time in a while for Mathieu van der Poel. And he's earned the opportunity to take it home from here. Well, it's a duo in pursuit, but do they have the firepower now? I think it'll be a full-blooded effort from Tim van Dijk to try and assist Florian Vermeersch to move across There were plenty of Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe jerseys prominent in that bunch behind, but they need to do everything they can possibly do to get back on terms with Mathieu van der Poel. The race is disappearing off up the road, and it's going to take a superhuman effort to get back on terms with none other than, well, potentially the greatest classics man of his generation. He's one of the greatest classics men of all time, I would venture to suggest. Certainly can be spoken about in that in their number, and his advantage now approaching half a minute on his two erstwhile breakaway companions. Meanwhile, a reassembly of the early break riders who are now still dangling in between three out front and the main peloton, or what's left of the main peloton behind. Let's see who's in that one. Some of the names up over the top, heading past the church. Trentin was thereabouts. Christophe Laporte. Picked out Jordi Meus. They're all racing for second at best right now, unless something remarkable happens, because it's up to, what, 27 seconds on the duo behind. 47, 48 seconds. 3/4 of a minute. Still the Bosberg to come. So let's count our chickens just yet. It's a study of power. He was gone. The heart of the couple's gone on the more daylight he put into Vermeersch and Van Dijk. Adds a second here or there in the Belgian crowd. He may not be their favoured son, but they recognise greatness and they support all of the best riders, regardless of their nationality. On to the final major impediment to glory today for Mathieu van der Poel. Indeed, far from being an impediment, it's probably an advantage. It's an opportunity for him to further drive a stake into the hopes of Tim van Dijk and Florian Vermeersch. There's the three riders from the early break. Can't get to the Bosberg quick enough, really, because they need to get up and over it. Ahead of that main peloton, looks like they're going to be hoovered up by it in advance of these unyielding cobbles. And well, Bosberg is the toughest climb of the day, but it is the last climb. And as such, there'll be tender legs, even for this man, approaching 200 kilometers of racing in his legs at this point. In the 980 meters of Bosberg, 400 of which is cobbled. It all adds up to about 6% average and 11% at its maximum gradient. It is a tough and challenging climb at the best of times, and it is at the end of a long, tough day of racing. And for Mathieu van der Poel, it is, as I say, an opportunity to add a few more seconds to the advantage, up to 33 seconds, and look at that, across the top, Van der Poel starts to rev. Meanwhile, three riders from the early break doing a great job of fending off the peloton on the early slopes of the Bosberg. A little bit of a worrying moment, you feel, for Alexis Reynard. Jote Greenen is going to be last man standing, sort of, from this group as they're hoovered up by the lead riders, jockeying for position, floundering to retain an interest in this race. Gone more than a minute in arrears of Mathieu van der Poel, back up to where it was. Far from closing it down, they're finding that it's going in the wrong direction. Okay to go, he only knows one way. One years of age, Mathieu van der Poel making his road racing debut for the season. Look at that, 222 up the climb. That's not actually going to beat the